She would allow them free place to eat and sleep. My grandmother was a saint. Well, oddly enough, that God-fearing woman who taught not only at Penn State University, but taught at Sunday school, taught me how to watch pro wrestling. That's a crazy story, but it's true. I remember sitting on her lap, watching the good guys and the bad guys. I remember watching two bleached blonde guys who she called Salt and Sugar. They could have been the Valiant brothers, it could have been the Graham brothers. I was too young to know, but I knew that she loved it, and I knew that there was something neat about it. But that's how I learned pro wrestling, on her lap, the matriarch of Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania, my grandma. Well, as it would go, I would get the opportunity almost on a monthly basis to be a pro wrestler. Jim would ask me, so, still interested in being a pro wrestler? I'm like, no, Jim, never was interested in being a pro wrestler, but thanks for asking. Then one day, he comes to bat with a zinger. He says, hey, Mike, listen, before you say no to my offer at being a pro wrestler, let me tell you, we're doing a charity program for a little girl who's sick. She needs an organ transplant. We'd love you to help out. What do you think? Well, who in their right mind is going to possibly say, you know what? No, dude, I'm good. I'm good. I don't really want to help her. She's sick, right? She'll be fine. I mean, my gosh, he sees I work with children. Hopefully he sees that I care for children, so when he come to me with this opportunity or offer, he knew I was done. So I took him up on it. I said, listen, I'll do one show. I'll work one show, we'll help this little girl, and I'll go back to being staff person. I'll go back to being student, no more pro wrestling. Long story short, we go to the wrestling event. We get 9 tickets this time, myself, 2 other staff people, as well as our 6 residents. About halfway through the show, I excuse myself and I sneak out. I leave them with still 2 staff, 6 residents. I go back and do the due diligence, whatever preparation pro wrestlers have to do in that magic dressing room back there, and then it comes time to come out. Well, let me tell you, in my 25 years of plus in the business, I have taken some really silly shots to the head. Quite frankly, I'm embarrassed on some of the shots I've taken to the head. I got hit in the face once with a steel chair, and the force was so strong it bent the chair around my head. I completely blacked out. It was a horrible idea and a horrible thing to do, but I did it. But that being said, I have taken some tremendous shots to my body. I didn't know that one of the most amazing shots to my body would take place before my very first match. All right, let me take you through. So our music is coming on. We're coming out the good guy dressing room. And Larry, one of our residents, was in the front row. He is easily one of the most excitable people I have ever met. I know, you're looking at me going, dude, you're wrapped tighter than a fiddle string. I know, I am, but Larry got me beat. This cat would get so excited, his eyes would get big and he'd shake, he'd be so excited. And as soon as I came out of the curtain, I met eyes with Larry. And he just looked at me, his eyes got that big, his jaw dropped open, his mouth got wide, and he just started to shake. I've never been a pro wrestler before, not really sure what I'm supposed to do, so I just kind of ran around and gave people a high five. I thought I was past Larry when I felt the impact. Larry wanted to pat me on the back. What Larry did was leave a welt this big, red, imprinted on my back that I wrestled with the entire night. I can tell you right now, that was far and away the hardest shot I took that entire evening. So Larry, wherever you are, you've got to be top 10 on hardest shots I've took in the business. So that was good job, Larry. Anyway, 6, 8, 10 minutes, whatever it lasted, I don't remember a thing. I know we won because good guys tend to win. I also know that bad guys snuck in the ring and gave us a stare down at the end. But as the story goes, the good guys won. Everybody drove home happily. So I'm in the dressing room. In the wrestling business, we call us the boys. The boys are the guys who wrestle, I apologize. So I'm standing in the middle of the locker room talking to Jim, surrounded by the boys. I said, Jim, thanks, buddy. I appreciate the opportunity to wrestle. I hope I did okay. Thanks again. We'll see you next month, and thanks again for the tickets. He goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. Call me next week so we can talk about the next show. Call me next week about the next show? What do you mean next show? You're giving me tickets, right? Yeah, but about your role in the show. Jim, I thought this was a one-time deal. Welcome to Pro Wrestling 101. Well, it was going to be a one-time deal, Mike, but did you see how the bad guys came and ran in there and stared you down nose to nose? Come on, man, it's pro wrestling. You can't end that way. You just got to see them next month and you're going to have to wrestle those guys. And I don't typically succumb to peer pressure, but all these guys in a locker room, keep in mind, I could have been a clown, or there could have been a clown staring at me, a destructor over here, a Dr. Destruction here, the masked terrorizer here, who knows, but they're all staring at me like I'm the bad guy. So I guess I succumbed. I said, fine, I'll do it, but one more and that's it. I don't know, has it been 25, 30 years later, and here I am telling you about my 25-year career or whatever it's been? What a long, strange trip it's been. Thank you, Grateful Dead, by the way. So all of a sudden, I'm a pro wrestler, in addition to being a full-time student, in addition to being a full-time counselor at a residential treatment center. I don't know really how it happened. I do know that I met the promoter and we talked about my character. So, Mike, who do you see yourself being? Talk to me. We got to create this character. Again, I'm doing this with a lot of reluctance because I really didn't want to be a pro wrestler. There are guys who live in vans, who live on eating noodles and bread just to be a pro wrestler. People spend thousands of dollars to go to school to be a pro wrestler. I just wanted to be a counselor so I could pay my way to school. But something was changing. It's like something out of my control was happening and I was along for the ride. My buddies will insist that I did everything in my power to be a pro wrestler, but truth be told, I didn't. But once I became a pro wrestler, as odd as it may seem, I wanted to be the best. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. So I did. And it was weird because as my career began to take off in wrestling, so became our wrestling organization. We went from wrestling in very, very, very small venues to selling out St. Matthew's Parish years in a row. Years in a row. I remember going to shows at St. Matt's Parish. We would arrive before the door would open. There would be a mob scene of people gathered at the door. You park your vehicle and they would see you coming up and you try to be as discreet as possible and they would literally chant your name as you kind of push your way through the crowd to get into the dressing room. It was as if we were rock stars on some small Delaware level. But it began to grow. But going back to my character, Jim and I talked. He says, well, if you liked a wrestler, who would you like? Who do you like? What wrestler today do you think is really good? Well, a long time ago, there was a gentleman by the name of Jimmy Superfly Snuka, who I ended up wrestling with many times and shared many a locker room and shared many a story with. I'm like, Jim, Superfly Snuka, that guy's fantastic. He was so cool, he didn't even have to talk. He just stared at the camera and the place went nuts. And he did this dive off the top rope that was legendary. In fact, he outdid his dive once when he dove off the top of a steel cage in Madison Square Garden. That may have been the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I said, you know, Jim, I think Jimmy Superfly Snuka is awesome. Let's emulate that. So lo and behold, Jim says, you know, Mike, we're going to call you Cheetah Master. Cheetah Master. That's a cat that runs real fast and he's a master. I have no idea where that name comes from. I don't understand the logic behind of it other than it's a jungle character. So I became that. Cheetah Master. Cheetah Master. I didn't even wear boots because I didn't want to spend the money because I knew in my heart of hearts I wasn't going to wrestle very long. So I was the only one in our wrestling organization that didn't wear boots. I wore these little tiny Tarzan looking cheetah leopard things. I taped up every part of my body. I let my hair grow and off we went to the races. That was my character. In fact, if you took Jimmy Snuka in this hand, David Lee Roth, who at the time I thought was the coolest front man in business, in the music business, mashed them together, morphed them into a pro wrestler, that's what I became. And it worked for a long time. So suddenly, I'm beginning to develop as a character and a wrestler. Our wrestling organization is beginning to blossom. We go from wrestling in very small venues to bigger venues. All of a sudden, we find ourselves in wrestling magazines. All of a sudden, we're going up to various spots to wrestle throughout the East Coast, in Connecticut, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania. We're doing TV in Reading. We're doing TV in Hamburg, Pennsylvania. All of a sudden, we're being interviewed. We're doing photo layouts. We're doing crazy stuff. I'm like, this is insane. I didn't have any future aspirations with it, but man, was it a good time. And then all of a sudden, we get a phone call. hey, would Cheetah, it's funny because my name's Mike, but for 20 plus years, nobody ever called me Mike. They just called me Cheetah. We got a phone call from a movie company, Ron Howard Productions. Ron Howard Productions? Ron Howard Productions is doing a movie. And this isn't a B movie. This isn't a C. This is an A movie. Ron Howard Productions is doing a movie. I think it's called Behind the Curtain, a documentary on pro wrestling. They want to send a crew and follow Cheetah Master as he rambles up the coast of Pennsylvania, not the coast, but the turnpike of Pennsylvania, wrestles in small farmhouses, wrestles in fire homes, I should say, and all over the place. Hamburg, Reading, small towns, I don't even remember the name of them, but they followed us all over the place. They would tape me getting ready. They would tape me in the ring. They'd tape me at the end. They'd tape us when we were doing the autographs. And I was so excited. I couldn't believe I was going to be in an A movie. They don't use tape anymore. But have you ever heard the phrase editor's floor? If an entertainer ends up on the editor's floor, that means they were physically cut out of the tape and they fall on the floor. Yeah, yours truly. I couldn't wait to see this movie. I was so excited, and I'm watching. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be on a big movie. I'm gonna be on a big movie. And I watched the whole movie, and I wasn't on any of the movie. I don't know what happened. It was such a cool thing. It didn't happen. That was the only blip in my wrestling career. But it would continue to be a lot of fun. We did TV. I got the opportunity to make a movie with Screech, Dustin Diamond. Talk about fun. That was crazy. But in terms of wrestling, we really started to gain momentum. We were on all the magazines. We were always rated in the top 500. And Cheetah Master became somewhat of a local celebrity. I was shopping one time with my mother. A little kid runs up to me and asks me for an autograph. I've had the opportunity to sign thousands of autographs, but never in front of my mother. My poor mom just wanted to crawl in a hole. She was embarrassed. Patted the little guy on the head, signed his autograph, and all away he went. I just looked at my mom, and she just shook her head. So we continued to wrestle. And all of a sudden, WWE guys are coming to our shows. All of a sudden, our guys are going to WWE performances. All of a sudden, we become the thing in pro wrestling. From an independent perspective, we were big stuff. We sold out St. Matt's Parish, I swear, 2.5, 3 years. It was an amazing run. But with that came an awful lot of pressure. Throughout that run, I was the champion an awful lot. And as a champion, your role is very, very specific. You have to put butts in the seats. You have to entertain them while they're in those seats. And most importantly, you have to give them a reason to come back. You need them to come back and sell out that arena again. And if you're not doing that, you're going to be moved on. So my job was to be that guy. I selected Welcome to the Jungle from Guns N' Roses. Quite frankly, that was the greatest intro song on the planet. If you don't set that room alive with excitement with that song, dude, you're done. So there were times when we would play that song 2 times before the crowd would settle down. It was all about the entrance. A lot of times I was exhausted before the match ever started, but it's all about one thing, figuring out what the crowd wants and giving it to them. And boy, that would haunt me down the road. But find out what the crowd wants and give it to them. So we were wrestling in, where were we? We were up in Reading doing a county fair. So it was neat. They had a wrestling ring and they had the stands on one side and they had these trucks, these Kenworth trucks as the backdrop. And they had the wrestling flag hanging off of it and they had a Pennsylvania flag hanging off of it, and we were filming. And when you film TV for pro wrestling, typically you'd wrestle 3 or 4 times. The wrestling event could last 4 hours. And you would wrestle and they would cut it up and make a month's worth of TV. So that was normal. We did that in Delaware. We did that in Pennsylvania. We did that all over the place. So we were filming up in Pennsylvania that time. And my goal was simple. When the crowd drove home, I wanted them to think